Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and this is going to be a fun episode. Not only because I'm joined by an incredible guest who's one of my Balkan neighbors, me being an Albanian, but she is also extraordinarily passionate about business. She's extraordinarily passionate about helping brands come to life. She's so good at what she does. I love the work that she's up to. So I want to tell you about today's guest. Her name is Alma Pantaloukas. She is the founder of a company called Ritual Thrive. She specializes in creating content strategies and building marketing calendars for brands, together with providing social media and influencer management services. In other words, things that all of us need to grow our businesses. With over 10 years of experience in the digital media industry, Alma has helped major brands transform their social media and digital footprint. Brands that we've all heard of, like LaCroix Sparkling Water, Celsius Energy Drinks, and she now focuses on startups in the health and wellness space. What started as a side hustle, but more of a service to small businesses in the last year or so, has now turned into a dream business for Alma, which I absolutely love to hear. She's one of us. She understands business growth and she loves doing it. So I'm so excited. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Alma Pantaloukas. All right, Alma, it is so nice to have you here. Welcome to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Heck yeah. Now, obviously, I know that you're up to a lot of good stuff, and a bio only scratches the surface of the cool work that you've been doing and that you're doing now. So fill in those gaps for listeners. Tell them, who the heck is Alma? How did you get here?
All right. Well, I've been in digital space for about 10 years now, and honestly, I'm just, somebody with a extremely positive attitude. And I think a lot of people just kind of don't appreciate that when looking for talent. But for me, even at the very, very beginning, there was no job too big or too small. And honestly, that's really what set me apart early in my career. And I definitely still practice that same mentality. I started as a social media coordinator at LaCroix Sparkling Water, really worked my butt off there, not because I had to, but honestly, because I loved to. I was a community manager, creating posts, launching campaigns, calendars, paid ads. And I just really got this sense of everything digital marketing in that role. And especially a little bit specializing more in social media, but have done a lot of things there. But at the very core of my daily routine was to really never, ever let a customer or a potential customer leave us a message or a comment or anything like that we did not comment back. And I was just so bullish on that, on myself, honestly. Anybody that comes to that came to our pages, whether it's social or anything like that, I just really made sure that we respond to it. I'm of this sense of no comment left behind. And honestly, in the early stages in that role, and really honestly, every other role, that has served us really well because we've earned a ton of earned media, if you will, just based on just that community management part of the role. And honestly, that first experience for me kind of just transcended into the rest of my career, where customer always comes first. And why I'm spending a little bit more time on this just in the beginning is really because no matter what kind of bells and whistles your website has, or your social, or how expensive your creative it is, if there's nobody to welcome your guests, your customers, they will go somewhere else. They're going to knock on somebody else's door. So make sure that you're absolutely bullish on having a really strong community management.
Yeah, Alma, I love that overview for so many reasons, particularly because when you list all the things that you were doing at LaCroix, for example, in my head, and I know that I'm coming into this because I teased it in the intro to this episode, but in my head where I go is I'm just like, that is real brand management. That is real brand development. That is real, the important part, brand execution, because what is a brand? It's something that we've been focusing on a lot here on the show in 2023. We've had a lot of content from awesome branding experts and specialists, but in my head, it's this stuff, the actual execution of it that takes a brand from a theory on paper to actual reality. Talk to us about that. How do we take that brand? Because I know that so much of your experience and knowledge and brilliance is rooted in understanding a brand. How do we turn that into real life?
That's honestly the fun part for every marketer. How we bring it to life is honestly just like really knowing like who you want to be. And I think it really all starts from just asking yourself as a brand, who do I like, essentially like filling in the blank. I am the go-to trusted source for what is that, blank for you, and really kind of owning that from front to end. And when you know that kind of like trickles down to like the channels that you're gonna go after, the demographic that you're gonna go after, but like really knowing who you are and what you want to serve and who you want to serve is the biggest starting point. Because if the brand does not have that, the marketer that work with the brand or the agency that's working with you will essentially be lost at some point down the line, or it will not be serving the content that your audience expects or that you should be serving to the audience that you want to attract. So it all comes down to like, who do you want to be and what you want to preach, and then really kind of figuring out, okay, this is who we want to be. Now, these are the channels that we're going to go after. And honestly, today, there's just like so many different channels that we can be, but it's also knowing that like your customer could be at all of these channels. So I know that sometimes it can be very challenging to be at just about every channel, but just like website, email, social media, like those are three big channels that you still have to kind of really know how to communicate your brand essence through. And just developing content for each channel can be a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah, we are jumping into the good stuff right away here today because you've already mentioned channels, you've already mentioned content, and obviously all of our listeners are in similar boats to you and I, Alma. A lot of them have service-based businesses. Some of them have product-based businesses. But at the end of the day, all of our listeners are those small business owners, whether they're making, $1,000 a month, $10K a month. We've got listeners who are doing seven-figure businesses. But across the board, the thing that unites all of us is we need to be on some channels. We can't operate in silence. And I know that there's a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to channels. You've got the Gary Vee approach, who obviously he has a whole team dedicated to getting him on all the channels. Now, on the flip side, you've got people who crush on one channel. One thing that my eyes have been open to this year is like, there are people out there who are making 7-8 figures just posting on Twitter, which blows my mind. I'm someone who's not active on Twitter. Where do you fall in that debate? What is the best approach, considering you understand our needs, Alma, better than most people, considering we are small teams, a lot of solopreneurs? How do we pick our channels? How many channels does it need to be? How do we manage all that?
I know, that's the tricky part. I would say at the very least, of course, you need a website. You need a place that you own. So no matter what happens with social platforms, the algorithms, the whatever, you own your own website. And I think at the end of the day, especially as a service business or even a product-based business, your number one goal should always be to grow your email list, because that is one channel also that you will own that relationship with your customer, and you'll be able to talk to them at a frequency you want to, and that it makes sense. As far as the social channels, that's another tricky part. I think there's a lot of chat about, just Facebook kind of being an old school type social media platform, but at the end of the day, it's still the biggest one. And if you are trying to sell something, I would say that prioritizing Meta in general, Facebook and Instagram, should still probably be your number one priority. And then testing other platforms is always a good thing, because you should never put a strategy together to like go all in on like another channel until you start testing and seeing whether or not the tests are coming back positive. So at the very least, website, absolutely, it's a must. You own it. You get to put out whatever it is you want to put out. Your email lists, very important, because that is how you're going to get in touch with your customers, and you can educate them, you can entertain them, you can sell to them, upsell, cross-sell, you name it. And then just starting from probably the basics of like Facebook and Instagram, and although it's not the basics, they still require a lot of attention, time, and money. But having that presence is going to serve you well, because people still use those two channels heavily, and they will, when they go to your website, the next thing they will probably do is go to your Instagram and see how active you are, because it's essentially like window shopping. Let me see what they're all about. And if your channels are not up to date, and you're going to be potentially turning away customers.
Yeah, I'm going to call that out for listeners, because I think there's so much brilliance in what you just shared with us, which is find your one or two channels that you're going to be consistent on, and then test the others. I think that's such good advice that we don't give often enough for entrepreneurs, but it's really powerful, because if you test another platform and it works, gosh, it becomes a lot easier to divert resources, divert time, attention, money to that other one. And it comes from testing. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, go somewhere else or double down on what is working. So Alma, I love that overview. You dropped a word that I knew we'd be talking about today. This is the one aspect that when I researched your work, I was like, I got to hear Alma's perspective on all of this. And that is the F word, frequency. How often should we be posting? Now, I know that you are very organized and very strategic in your approach to managing all sorts of content. Talk to us about frequency. How often should we be showing up? How does it differ by channel? What are all the things we need to think about there?
That's a very good question. And honestly, it's just about the first question that my clients ask, and, my bosses in previous full-time positions have asked. I think the rule of thumb is, you don't want to be forgotten. And when you're doing your competitive research, of course, like this is also one of the biggest pieces of information, is like, how often is your competition posting? When it comes to social media, what's really important is you don't want to post too frequently just for the posting sake. You want to post quality content that people can kind of rely on and feel confident about when they're spending time reading it, consuming it, you name it. So from a frequency point of view, I would say when it comes to, let's say, Instagram, Facebook posts, I would probably not go any less than 15 posts a month, only because you want to make sure that you are top of mind for your customer. And if you're not if you're posting every so often, they're going to forget about you. Every industry at this point is so saturated, and everybody is just up for attention of the customers, that if you're not doing it, somebody else is. So that's definitely something that's really important to think about. And then on the other side, again, don't post just for the posting's sake. You really need to make sure that it's information that people are in need of. And the best way to look at that is when you're creating content strategy, calendars, no matter what, always come from a point of like, from a customer point of view, they will always ask themselves, what's in it for me? And if the posts or the emails or the blogs are not really answering that question, what's in it for them, you're going to lose them, because we all care about our own needs. It sounds selfish, but that's what we do. We don't have time to think too much about somebody else's needs if they're not our needs. That's just human nature. So always create content that speaks to their needs and what's in it for them.
Yeah, I feel like you just put so many of us on blast, and I'm gonna take full public responsibility in front of all of my listeners, because you said the words, sometimes we post just for the sake of posting. And I'm for sure guilty of that. Been there, done that. And I'm sure 90% of listeners, heck, probably 100%, let's face it, we're all guilty of this at one time or another. And so with that in mind, hearing you say things like building a content marketing calendar, in my head, I'm just like, I have never really had a calendar. It's something that we're actively working on behind the scenes here in 2023. But that calendar, the thing that really stands out to me, Alma, is it's also cohesive. It's coordinated. It's strategic. It's not, okay, the email list, I've got someone who writes my email newsletter. They're writing about this week, but then on Instagram, we're talking about this. It really is that coordinated. Where do we even start when it comes to putting together a content calendar with a real strategy behind it?
Yeah, that's honestly, like, the content and just content strategy in general can be so daunting for small business owners, heck, any business owner. And it can be really difficult to, like, even start thinking about, like, okay, I have all these great ideas, but what do I do with them? When do I activate them and things like that? And I think from a structure point of view, I like to keep things simple, and just, going down from, like, having maybe 4 or 5 step process is always a good thing. You're going to start with that, fill in the blank, like, I'm the go-to trusted source for whatever that is. And then second, you're going to be like, okay, now I know, what I'm trusted source for. And then you're going to go and establish your goals. And I know as marketer, we talk about goals a lot, and ultimately we all want, our number one goal is to attract something, somebody, whatever. And so the number one absolutely needs to be prioritized, really knowing who you are and what you're offering. But then number 2 has to be, setting your goals for the sake of, creating content that you're spending time and money on. But again, no matter what you're doing, whether it's webinars or you want to attract leads or donations for your nonprofit or sell product, ultimately your goal is to attract, to sell. And then in order for you to do that, you really got to know how you will attract and what type of people you want to attract to determine, your goals and stuff like that. So knowing 1 and knowing 2, this is who I want to be, and then saying these are my goals. Then you're going to say, okay, I need channels that I'm going to be able to use to spread my message and achieve my goals. And this is where you determine, okay, I need the website, I need X, Y, and Z from a social platform perspective. I'm going to need emails, podcasts, no matter what it is. And again, like, you can try them all, but that can be time consuming. And if you don't have resources to activate all channels, it's a lot better to do less but more with it, rather than just creating accounts on all channels and then doing the bare minimum on all of them, because, you're just spread too thin.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, go ahead, Alma.
Well, I think, then you really kind of, like, have to figure out, like, who is your demographic, because if you've got the channels, you've got your message, you've got your goals, then you absolutely have to know, like, who you're talking to, because the number one step will definitely kind of determine how you talk depending on your demographic, right? You definitely make sure that, like, you really understand your demographic's goals, motivations, and challenges. And that's essentially going to create your consumer personas. And I'm very, very bullish on this part, because we as marketers and business owners, oftentimes we have this sense of like who our customer is, but sometimes it just doesn't turn out to be that way, right? You go out and you put your ads out and you're up for you're trying to attract a certain persona that you think is your customer, and then your ads fail, your creative fails because it's just not attracting the actual customer. So what I would say there is, if your competition products or services are, let's say, on Amazon, spend hours upon hours of reading reviews from people on their pages, because this is absolutely where you're going to find gems on why people use what they use, what they hate about it, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, what they love about it. And that will essentially help create your product features and benefits and all these things. And then, content creation. I know this is a part where you kind of get like, okay, I know, like, I have all these ideas, I just don't know where to start. But again, you're either hiring content creators to do a lot of the video content that you might need, but you could potentially get a Canva account, and they have just so many amazing templates out there that can really help you do that. So there's a lot of places to get content. You just kind of need to know what kind of content you want to develop.
Yeah, for sure. And for all of you listeners who are thinking, I want to go deeper into that, we're for sure going to go deeper into that, because Alma, you have so much brilliance and these things come so naturally to you that as you're answering these questions, I can almost see like a bag of tricks that you have when it comes to marketing and content strategies, where you're just like, there's this channel and there's this channel. And for you, I can imagine, having worked inside so many companies, having worked with so many clients, inside so many different types of projects and products and services, that you've seen, well, in this case, let's lean on this channel. Let's lean on this content strategy. So it comes naturally to you. I also want to call out, before we go deeper into this stuff, I want to call out that I feel like you just revealed a huge secret for listeners in reading Amazon reviews. It's something I learned so early on, especially when I started creating online courses about marketing, about business, about entrepreneurship, is I would go read the reviews of business, marketing, and entrepreneurship books and see what people said. Oh, I wish it covered this. So that's a huge golden nugget that you just dropped for listeners right there. But of course, the big question where we're going to go next, and you already knew it towards the end of that question, is talking about the actual content. I'm going to use a real life example. We get questions from listeners all the time for this show. And one of our listeners just this past week asked us, I am a Facebook ads agency owner. I really feel moved to start being more active on social to reach even more people organically, but I don't know what type of content to post. And Alma, when we talk about having a content marketing calendar, well, what do I want to talk about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? I want to talk about, in this case for this listener, I want to talk about Facebook ads, but obviously we want to vary our content. What are some of those? Reveal some more from your bag of tricks. What types of content can we use to vary it? Because I can already see in all your answers, so much of your approach is customer centric. How do we figure out what is the right content for them, not for us?
See, that's my favorite part. Really kind of delivering content that people are actually interested in. I use this tool called Answer the Public, answerthepublic.com. And you basically will go in and type in any kind of keyword. Also, I'm not associated with Answer the Public, just an FYI, but I've been using it for years. You put in any kind of keyword, whether you're selling social media marketing course, or you're selling magnesium vitamins and supplements, or you're selling plant-based skincare, whatever it might be, you literally will go and type in those keywords and phrases, and it will essentially give you all the questions that people are asking about on that topic on Google. So you will get a list of those questions, the most frequently asked questions, and that will build the bulk of your content strategy. And what it will essentially help you is it will make you create content that people are in search of. And that's really important. But how do we, because there's so many ways you can do that. And I would say just having like some kind of a structure for your content calendar always helps, because that really will kind of keep you focused on what you need to deliver. And that can be, you can say, okay, it's Monday, Monday motivation. And that doesn't need to be just like cute quotes and whatnot, but it can actually be, if you're an agency, it could be content that essentially covers your clients' wins. And that is motivation for somebody else, right? So just setting up like some kind of a structure Monday through Sunday or whatever. And again, you don't have to fill in every day just to create content, but just like really trying to go deep on what people are asking for, what people need, because there's just like so much information out there. And if you're not giving them what they're really looking for, they're going to go look for it somewhere else.
Listeners, I told you guys at the top of today's episode that Alma was going to be incredible. Here she is dropping so much. I'm just going to forever, Alma, from now on, I'm just going to call it your bag of tricks. You are dropping your bag of tricks in front of all of us right here, answerthepublic.com. That is a huge tip right there, and I love that. And I also want to bring it back to this, because I think this is important, is that now that you're dropping the content strategy stuff, and I love the way that you frame it. It's obviously the way that we've structured our podcast content for 6+ years now, is saying, Mindset and Motivation Mondays, Strategy Wednesdays. Now we've got Action Saturdays. We've got Solo Sundays. We have all those things, and it has helped us structure that. But the big disclaimer that you introduced to us earlier in this episode is also, you call it, it's very clever, I love that you call it this, no comment left behind. Is that putting the content out there is one part of the equation. Engaging with the people that it attracts is the second part of the equation. Alma, how do we take those conversations? How do we take that engagement off of an Instagram like, an Instagram comment? Where do we go from there? Because obviously what we're all passionate about and interested in is business growth. And you are as well. So I know that you're really well equipped to answer this. How do we bridge that gap between social engagement and turning it into customers and clients?
Absolutely. And this is a really big one. And oftentimes it's what kind of business owners are drawing the line, whether or not the platform is worth it, right? Because they do spend a lot of money on it. The way you do that is making sure that you are hiring the right talent that is very positive, talent that is very, they go above and beyond, and they don't mind doing that for other people. It's a service trait, right? That they need. So if somebody's asking a question, not only should you answer that question, but you should go a step further and ask them a question back. And it's like, were you looking for X, Y, and Z, or did you get what you needed, or is there something else that we can help you with? Whatever it might be, you go above and beyond answering those questions, because that will determine whether or not you make a sale or not, often. And so just always make sure you go above and beyond for your customers, for people that are just even asking questions. Like, your focus is making sure that you engage them back and forth, not just simply saying yes, no, or answering a question at the bare minimum, but like really trying to understand what they need so that you can serve them better.
Yeah, I love that perspective, because of course it is that human element. Pretty much all of your answers come back to that human element. I guess with my marketing hat on, Alma, someone who's keen on making sales, obviously all of us are in that mode. What is that fine line? Do we incorporate calls to actions in our Instagram stories every once in a while and in our social content? How do we balance call to actions versus just showing up out of service?
I am very pro calls to action, and customers are too. They're on your page because they're looking for something. So instead of just serving, content, but then kind of like stopping there is also not good enough for the customer as well. What they expect you to say is, the ultimate payoff for you by using our, services and products or whatever is X, Y, and Z. And guess what? It's available, go do it. I think the biggest example I can probably share here is like we often write blogs for our website, right? And more often than not, people ask themselves a question whether or not it's working. What I love doing is, and again, this is honestly like all in service of the people and your customer, because they need this information. They need you to almost like connect those dots and say, hey, you were looking for this solution. Not only do we have it, but it's available. Click here. It's easy for you to make that purchase. You got to make things easier for them. And now going back to the blogs, what's happening a lot is that we write blogs, we give up all this information, and that's where it stops. But it does not need to. What I've been doing with my clients is not only are we providing information, but we have now included like this, right-hand side module that it will essentially serve as a banner ad that speaks to that pain point that your customer or your potential customer is reading about. So like you have to bring all the information to them. Don't let them have to read a blog and then go to Google and be like, okay, so what should I use for X, Y, and Z? Like you need to serve them in that sense of providing them information, but also a solution.
Yeah, which I think again shows how intentional and strategic you are about all of these things, because you're right. How many people just throw a blog post up and they say, there you go, that's marketing. But the reality is, it's something I always joke about, Alma, is I always say, if nobody's reading it, it doesn't count as marketing. It's just busy work. So for example, if you have a blog that you are always posting on, but you get no traffic to it, let alone traffic that could potentially turn into customers and clients, that doesn't count as marketing. And likewise, I feel like we have to talk about it in today's session, Alma, is that the same is true for social media. If you are just making posts into silence, then that doesn't count as marketing. For all of those listeners out there, because I know they're out there feeling this pain right now of wanting to take action on these things you're talking about, but they're thinking, I don't have an audience. I don't have anyone who's listening to me on social. I know it's a very difficult question to ask, but how do we start tackling that huge problem?
Well, you either have money or time. Could be both. That's honestly probably the best combination. But if you have the money, you want to grow your followers and grow your audience faster, then you use paid advertising. That's probably your best way. But if you are in your startup stage and you really want to make sure that you're spending enough time learning who might be your potential customer and finding your market fit and all, there are tactics to do it, but it takes a lot of time, consistency, and the way to go about it is, let's say that you are selling multivitamins. And what you want to do, especially, for example, for Instagram, what you want to do is search through hashtag multivitamins. And not only are you looking for information on like what is the type of content that's being put out there for multivitamins in general, but you're also looking for like customer posts that are using those hashtags, and you're reading through their comments, you're reading through their captions. What does their picture say about that particular hashtag? You want to engage with them because you want them to notice you, and that's probably the best way. So you will comment on their page, and whether it's pitching your own product, which is totally okay, or just saying, yeah, we love multivitamins too, and we also think the world of them and why you should, take them. That's honestly just like saying hello and providing information is probably a great way to do it. And if you do that 50 times a day, again, this is where the time comes in. You will start attracting people only if your pages are ready and primed to receive your visitors. So make sure that obviously, your pages are in place. So I'm just making this comment based on my assumption that your pages are ready, right? But just like going out there and engaging with people, real people, is very important. And having community manager or whoever is doing that, being a very positive person, it's just a soft skill that's like absolutely a must for this particular role. And they will do that for you. They're going to engage. They're going to go look for people. Being proactive is basically the game there.
Yeah, listeners, I want to call it out for all of you, myself included, is that these strategies that Alma is going over with us right here, right now, any of us can do this. You saw it. If you've got money, more money than time, go invest in paid ads, build up your audience, get in front of more people. But if you've got more time than money, literally anybody can do this type of research and engagement that Alma is sharing with us. So I love that. Alma, there's one thing I really want to call out about your approach, that as I researched your business ahead of today's session, it really stood out to me because I know how intentional you are in your strategy and in your approach. I know how intentional you are with your words. And one thing that really sticks out about your business is when people go, we'll talk about your website at the end of today's episode, but it's ritualthrive.com. That's ritualthrive.com. Your headline says, let's create, grow, and optimize your digital presence. What's fascinating to me and what really stands out is I've seen a million social media agencies, and you don't claim to be a social media agency. So much of your messaging talks about a digital presence. And here today, I hear it in your answers where you talk about, hey, be engaging with your customers, be engaging with your audience. You don't just view it as a marketing channel. You genuinely view it as a presence channel, your opportunity to be in front of people. Talk to us about that part of your perspective on all these things that we're talking about. How much is presence, and why do you choose that word? Why is that word so relevant to what we should be targeting, what our goals should be on any platform?
Yeah, I think honestly it just comes down to like, if you don't have a presence, you will not find a customer, or the customer will not be able to find you. So essentially you got nothing, which is really weird to say, but it is true. Everybody today, consumer today, is constantly on their phone, desktop, you name it, and they're just looking things up. And there's so much of so many businesses out there that don't have like the customer service that, that people can depend on and things like that. And people need trusted sources to shop from. That's why we're such big, fans of Amazon. And what's important is that you do provide that presence, not only on your website, but also at least some of the social platforms, is because you really want to show that you're a real person, that there's a real person behind you, your product, somebody that they can call and feel like somebody will answer if there is an issue. And that's really what it comes down to when it comes to presence. You absolutely have to have it. The consumer expects it. And if they don't find it, they go somewhere else.
Yeah, and colloquially, we know that because even in our day-to-day lives, forget business for a second, we all love that friend, that family member that we always say, oh, they're always there. That is presence. That's what we're talking about in our real lives. So of course, we inherently trust the businesses that are always there. It's 10 o'clock at night. I know that Publix is closed. I can go to Target. That is the presence that Target has, is that I know that it's always there. So I love that perspective, Alma. Gosh, there's so much that I feel like we could dive into, but as we come towards the end of this interview, I always love giving my guests the most difficult job, which is we talked about all these different things, Alma. We didn't even get into errors, mistakes that you see a lot of business owners make. But as we come towards the end of this interview, the hard question for you is, how do we wrap this up into a bow for listeners who are listening to this saying, I've got a lot of work that I need to do. I need to beef up my presence. I need to be present. What's the thing that you think we should focus on? What's an actionable insight with all these things that we talked about that every small business owner would benefit from sitting down and saying, you know what, Alma inspired me today. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's so hard because digital marketing, just in general, is just such a big topic. But at the end of the day, you are serving a customer. So whoever's developing your content strategy, whether that's you or somebody on your team or an agency, does not matter. But you have to push them to really get into your consumer's shoes and always ask, because that's what customer is asking, what's in it for me? And instead of, like I said earlier, instead of maybe doing 30 posts that go, an inch deep horizontally because, that's what a person on your team feels like they got to do, or an agency that, essentially they're trying to deliver on your scope of work, but challenge yourself to go 30 inches deep on 10 to 15 posts versus 1 inch deep on 30. And because at the end of the day, riches are in the niches, and you cannot be everything to everybody. So just instead of like always focusing on your product features, focus on like the ultimate payoff for your customer, because ultimately that is what they care about.
Yes, incredible advice there that all of us can and need to take action on. Alma, I love that you chose that topic to go into for our action for today, because you're right. We can always gain that deeper understanding. And I love the concept of going 30 inches deep rather than 1 inch deep on 30 random topics. If anything, that'll just leave people being like, does this person ever go deeper and have any substance there? So I love that perspective. Really good advice there. Alma, I knew time would fly by with you here today. I can't believe we're at the end of today's episode already. But I want to open up the floor for you to tell listeners where they can go to learn more about you, all the awesome stuff that you're doing and putting into the world, and of course, your business, Rich Will Thrive.
Sure, absolutely. You can find me at ritualthrive.com. That is my website. We also have Instagram, and that's where you can find us. And we try to put out as much content and useful information as we possibly can. But as we know, as a digital agency, clients always come first. But I wanted to share something with everybody because I know that content strategy and development can be such a daunting, word and task. But I created this digital marketing map for everybody that they can kind of like really utilize as of today. But essentially it's going to help you kind of like plan out content marketing. And so what's really happening is that, and Brian, I'm hoping that you're going to be able to share this with everybody, but you want to build out your annual marketing content calendar because, and I say content because it is everything, right? But it's going to help you kind of like plan out things, from looking at monthly holidays to like special events and taking everything that's going on with the world into consideration when you're planning for your own content, obviously looking at your own strategies and things like that, and putting it all together into like one cohesive calendar. That's what I am providing you with today, because again, I know that we all have a lot of amazing ideas and being very creative and things like that, but sometimes it's just really hard to like categorize them and organize them and things like that. So this Excel sheet, this digital marketing map is really going to help you kind of hone in and bring your ideas together and make them actionable and, to a point where you can actually execute them.
Yes, Alma, I so deeply appreciate that. And as someone who really respects and admires the work that you do with how strategic and intentional you are about all of these different things that we talked about here today, I know that listeners are going to be chomping at the bit to get their hands on that worksheet so that they can put it into practice for their own business. So I so appreciate that offer for our listeners. Listeners, I know you're going to want it. So you know the drill. Wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, check the show notes down below or head to our show's website website to find all these links that Alma just dropped on us, including that worksheet that I know you're all going to want. So definitely check below for those links. Her business website is at ritualthrive.com. And of course, because she's strategic about all of these things and super organized, the links to her Instagram are there right in the header of her website. Her LinkedIn is also there, as well as her company blog. So definitely check out ritualthrive.com. Otherwise, Alma, thank you so much for joining us here today on the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.